All right, we are live. Welcome, Samantha Laycock. Thank you.
Awesome. I've never
So
done
I
Zoom
have
through
to
Facebook.
close my Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I might.
There we go. All right, we are live, and now we're going to chat with Samantha Laycock. All right, I've got all my extra tabs closed so we don't have that feedback in the background, just repeating everything we're saying.
Right.
And so, Samantha, thank you for being here this afternoon. As you know, I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. Like, I've been talking about collaborations, interviews, having guest experts in my group, Evolution University, and now it's happening. You are my third guest expert. So as you and I know, we've had a fun relationship where you've coached me in blogging before. I've coached you in next level living relationship stuff before, and our paths always cross. It's always so amazing what we get to learn and exchange with each other. I love it. I adore you, and I adore what you bring to this world, especially for women on their post-traumatic growth journey. You guys, Samantha is lives in Alberta, Canada, and is a blogging coach. Also, she describes herself as an authentic expression coach, which I love and adore that name. Samantha, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you started getting into blogging and what brings you here now to how you are changing the world?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I have to shout. I love everything you do. So, yeah,
Namaste,
my
mutual.
story, my story began my story began a very long time ago, but the blogging story started in 2014. I had just moved to Alberta, so I'm from the U.S., so I'm from Wisconsin, and my husband's from Ontario. So we lived in Ontario. We moved to Ontario in 2007. We lived there for 7 years, and in 2014, it was kind of like, hey, this is now or never. Let's move across country and figure this out. And so we did it, and I just remember really kind of that moment before when my son would have been six or seven when we moved. And he started school when he was 3. So in Ontario, school's a bit different. So he did JK and JK. So junior kindergarten, he started 3 just because his birthday lands like December 28th. So he's like right at the cutoff. So he went to school with the same kids for 4 years, and so he had known them a really long time. And I just remember him, before we moved, he said he was terrified that he wasn't going to make friends because nobody knew him. And in that moment, I just remember looking at him and just telling him that he could be whoever he wanted. This was his chance to kind of reinvent himself. Nobody knows you. You get to have fun and be someone, change it, whatever, right? Be who you are. And so we made the move, and July came, and school started in September. And about a month in, it was like, okay, you know what? I need something. Like, I am needing something. Nothing is cutting it anymore. I'm feeling lost. And honestly, I had been feeling lost for a very, very long time. I had Quentin in 2007. And so that was quite the year for me because it was, we moved to Canada. So I left all of my family and friends behind, moved to an area that I didn't know anybody except for my husband. And I found out I was pregnant like a month later. And so it was like one thing after another. And so going through a pregnancy all by yourself can be very, very lonely.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right. And so I just remember saying, you know what, motherhood, it's what I need. It's what I've been waiting for. And come to find out that's not at all the case. Like, I love my children dearly, and I am so incredibly lucky to have three amazing children.
Yeah, your
But
kids are pretty amazing, by the way.
yeah, I mean, they are incredible humans. They drive me absolutely crazy, but they really are good people. But at the end of the day, I was just like, something is missing. Like, I was mom for a good 3 to 4 months, and then all of a sudden it was just like, I need more. Something is missing. And it probably also comes down to the fact that I had never dealt with my trauma before, right? And so
Yeah,
I
so can
kept
you
going.
talk about the trauma just to give our audience a little
Yeah,
bit of, yeah.
yeah. So in
But you
2003,
can keep carrying on your story, weave it
yep,
in there.
in
I don't mean to interrupt.
2003, I was a freshman at university. I had gotten into my first choice school, moved away to go to university thinking, hey, I'm 18, nothing bad can happen to me.
Wow, yeah.
I'm unstoppable. And I had this, I don't want to really say a plan, but I mean, I had my university degree picked out. I was going for political science. Don't ask me why, because political, I look back and I'm like, why? Like, that is awful. But
I thought I wanted to be an accountant.
right?
Gina Brogan, an accountant? What?
I know, it's so funny when you look back and you're like, man, my 18-year-old self, she was smart, but so not smart. And so it was my first semester of university, and I had never dated. Like, in high school, I never dated. I like to think that it was because I was intimidating to boys, but I don't think that's what it was. But that's what I like to tell myself. And so I a boy had finally asked me on a date. So I was like, awesome, right? I'd never been kissed, never did anything, and I was 18. And so I was like, you know what? The safe thing is to invite him back to my dorm room because I had finals. It was finals week. So I was like, and I was packing to go home, and I lived in a dormitory. So I'm like, nothing bad is going to happen.
Right.
And so I invited him back. We watched a movie while I was packing to go home, and I had one final left. So that was
The
kind of
original
my,
Netflix and chill.
yeah, it was my safe place because I had somewhere I had to be, right? So I thought I knew that it was safe.
Yeah.
Come to find out it wasn't. And so I was sexually assaulted that day in my
Wow.
dorm room.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never made it to my final. I kind of afterwards, it's weird because I remember everybody always talking about fight or flight, right? Because I mean, in high school, I mean, that's what they talk about. They never talk about the freeze portion of it. And so
Right.
for a very, very long time, I was like, I don't understand why nothing kicked in because I froze. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't fight. I didn't try and get away. I literally just froze. And it was sort of like you're having this out of body experience. You're watching something happening to you, but there's no way to stop it. And
Yeah.
so for me, that was very, very hard to deal with because I was the really great student. I was I went from class president, I was student body president. I had like my life figured
Wow.
out to all of a sudden here I was in a dorm room, some guy just sexually assaulted me, got up and left, and now I'm like, well, now what? Now who am I? And it's hard to explain how you lose everything. Like in a matter of seconds,
Wow,
everything is
Samantha.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no going back. And I think that's something that survivors don't talk about. There is no going back. There's a before and an after. You can't ever go back to that before person.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a very, very long time, I tried and I didn't tell anybody. I had kept my sexual assault a secret.
Oh boy.
And my parents obviously knew something was wrong.
Can I ask you something about
Yep.
that? Because Oh, and if you see me kind of going over here, I'm looking at our Facebook Live
Yep.
in the group, and I've invited people to make comments or questions.
Perfect.
But I have a question about that because I think you're not alone in the keeping it a secret. And can you speak to why? Why
Yeah.
people, and I'm talking from every age, people who experience sexual assault, they keep it a secret.
Yep.
Can
Yeah.
you
And
speak to at
for
least why you did?
for me, it came down to I didn't want, especially my parents, because I was very close with my parents. We were raised Catholic. I mean, it was super strict. There's no sex. There's no,
Right.
I mean, no birth control. I mean, it is literally you have to behave, right? And so at first, I thought that it was me, they were going to blame me. My parents aren't like
The
that.
shame,
So
right?
I know that's not really the reason. And as I look back, the reason for me was I didn't want them to get consumed with anger because I was so angry. I didn't want their lives to be filled with it. I didn't want them to have to experience the confusion. How do they even deal with this? How do they like, because that's something as a parent that you're not taught. I mean, you can't be
Right.
taught that
Yeah.
at all. And so for me, it was I didn't want them to experience and look at the world in a different way. I didn't
So
want
you were
that hatred
protecting
to
your
take over.
parents. You were
Yeah.
protecting
And
them.
so for me, it was like, I can act out, I can lash out. They're just going to think it's some teenage rebellious behavior and I'll get away with it. Right. And so that was kind of my protection. And they knew, I mean, they clearly knew something was wrong. And I do remember my dad, I'm very much a daddy's girl.
Uh-huh.
And I do remember my dad had asked if anything had happened, if it was sex. And I just said yes, because I was like, I just want the conversation to stop. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want him to know about it. And so I just said yes, because I just didn't want him to go there. And I wish for a very long time that someone could have looked at me and just known without having me to say the words, right? And then just them automatically being, I know what you're going through. This is what you can do, right? But I didn't want to have to say it. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is they want someone to know, but saying it out loud makes it real. And that is terrifying when you
Yeah.
have to say it out loud, especially when you're not ready, right? When you're not ready to actually say this is what had happened. And I mean, we all hear the stories of victims coming forward and all the stuff that happens afterwards, all the negativity that comes out of it.
Yeah.
And I think
Well,
that
there's
really
the victim
stops a lot of
shaming, the
people.
blaming, and the guilt. And I'm sure with your religious upbringing, the guilt must have been kind of preceding a lot of that too.
Yeah, and
Saying, did
it's
I bring this
embarrassing.
on?
Yeah.
And you're questioning, oh my God, maybe I was asking for it somehow. Maybe I allowed it because I hadn't had a boyfriend since then and I
Yeah.
was too open to
I'm
things
too
and kind of
naive. I
too
mean, there's so
naive.
many
Yeah.
thoughts that come, right? And I was embarrassed because I didn't want someone to say, well, what were you thinking? What did you
Right.
expect to happen? Right?
Yeah.
Because those are the comments. Unfortunately, people don't mean them the way they say them. But when you are in that victimhood, because there are three stages. It's victimhood, survivorhood, and then warrior, right? And so being stuck in victim mode, I was stuck in victim mode for a very, very
Mhm.
long time. I mean, it was
Right.
11 years. So
Yeah. Wow.
in 2014, that's when I had decided to, once we had moved, I was kind of at that point where my kids started to pick up on things that I was doing because I hated myself.
The
And
self-sabotage.
yes, and I was so super, I thought I was super smart by don't use the word fat, don't use the word hate, be super careful about what you say in front of your kids, but they pick up on the actions, right? I mean, damn smart children pick up on the things that you're trying to hide. And so I
Yes.
noticed that they were starting to pick up on a few of the bad habits that I had had.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was like, okay, I need to figure this out. And
Uh-huh.
I need to do it in a, I don't want to say dramatic way. I started a small business program about 7 weeks ago, and someone I met there said recovering loudly. And to me,
Mm.
that like hit it right on the dot, right?
Uh-huh.
She talked about exactly what I do. And for me, I needed to recover loudly because for those 11 years, I had been playing small. I had been holding back. Nobody really knew who I was. I was
Uh-huh.
hiding everything about me. And so in 2014, my sister-in-law had said, because I've always been a writer, and I stopped for a very long time because of the sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was like, well, why don't you start a blog? And I was like, oh, well, I don't even really know what that is. And so she's like, you know what? It's just think of it as an online journal, online diary. She's like, nobody even has to read it. It's just you getting out there. You're just getting your thoughts out, and that's it. And I was like, oh, well, that doesn't sound so bad. The writer in me was totally intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. I started a free blog, and I named it The Original Me. And
Nice.
I named it that because I was ready to start the healing journey, but I didn't realize kind of the different processes that we would go through. So I was still in 2014, I was still trying to get back to that 2003 version of me before the
Right.
sexual assault. So
Yeah.
I was still thinking it was possible to be her again.
Right.
And
Wow.
it wasn't until I shared my story and I started the healing process that I realized I couldn't. There's no way to get back to that. I needed to learn to love and accept.
You had to integrate that story into who you were
Yeah,
because
and
it made you who you
yeah,
are today.
yeah.
Wow.
And by admitting
Yeah.
it, by saying it out loud,
Yeah.
that's really when the grieving process started,
Oh my
right?
gosh, Samantha, that's so amazing. Like how we do that, right? We try and like, this isn't happening or didn't happen or that's not me, therefore, but as everybody on the healing journey knows, all of those things happened for us to create this version of me now. And now I have muscles and strength to face the world. And
Yeah,
the scar tissue is our warrior wounds.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is the cracks are always going to be there. There
Yeah.
isn't going to be a finished version of me. There's always going to be something that pops up. There's always
Mm-hmm.
going to be really hard days for me to get through for mental health. And I've come to know that, but I have things in place now where I can say, okay, you know what? If I'm having a really bad day, this is what's going to work. Or I just have to be like, you guys need to leave me alone for 10 minutes. I just need to just be. I just
Yeah.
can't be around people. And because I think there's this misconception about healing too, and I'm sure you've realized this through the whole process, is we are taught to believe that there's an end. That
Yeah, that we're gonna get there.
if you go
There.
to counseling, it's gonna work and you'll be good. the but the thing is, and what I've learned is I need counseling, but I also need my books. I also need my self-care. I also need to be able to cry. And I
Yeah.
need to have these different channels because
Mm-hmm.
counseling isn't the end all be all, right? That we're taught that just go
Go
talk to
fix
someone.
yourself. Go fix yourself.
Yeah, and it doesn't work like that. You're going to get better, you're going to feel better, but there isn't an end. It's going to be consistently growing and changing, and something
Mm-hmm.
else is going to trigger you that you've never experienced in the whole
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. However, I do believe, at least in my experience, and a lot of people who I've worked with, um, there's a there is a place where I think you were saying it, where you move out of victim consciousness, victimhood, into what I call creator consciousness, where you actually realize, oh my gosh, I have 100% responsibility over my life. There's no one to ever blame again. And that's where, in my experience, where life gets to be really fun. We get to continue to observe who we are, what we're doing, what we're going through, what we're experiencing. And that's the power that we
Mm-hmm.
have, where we're like, oh, I know this feeling, and I know this like triggered thought or whatever. And I also have tools,
Yeah.
and I can get through this.
Yeah, and for me, that's kind of where victimhood, survivor, going from victim to survivor to warrior is. So
Mhm.
survivor is when you finally say, you know what, this is what happened to me, right? You
Yeah. Yeah.
you you can, and I mean that doesn't mean it's not scary. It doesn't mean that it takes away um
Yeah.
the fear. It doesn't mean that it makes it easy. It just means that now you're willing to say it out loud, even if it's out loud to yourself in the mirror.
True.
You're
Right.
willing to
Hmm.
just say it and speak it,
Hmm.
and you'll notice how your body reacts, right?
Hmm.
And so from there, that's where blogging stepped in for me, because my first blog post that I ever shared was, this is what happened to me.
Hmm.
And I honestly didn't think that it would be as big as it was, because it's funny, because as a survivor we know that we're not alone, but you still feel incredibly alone.
Yep.
You know
Yep.
that there's other women there,
Yeah.
but you don't realize the amount of women
Yeah.
until you say, this is what happened to me. And all of a sudden that blog post was published, and I literally shared it to one Facebook group, and it was the moms group that I was part of in the community I had just moved to. And I was like, I know nobody knows me, but I just wanted to share, this is what I wrote.
Wow.
And all of a sudden the messages came in and was like, I've experienced it too, you're not alone. And it was like, holy crap. Like, you don't realize the gravity of your story until you share it, because there's so many people that have the same story.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's amazing how
Yes.
many people,
Yes.
and there's little ingredients to each of our stories that connect people,
Yeah.
whether it's our marriages or a relationship with our kids or whatever
Yeah.
experiences we've had. I am blown away by, I'll just mention something that happened to me, and so many people are like, oh my gosh, me too.
Yep.
Or I'll mention something, a growth experience, and they'll say, yeah, that helped me too. It's just really, we are so, so connected. And
And that's
it's
where the power of
amazing to
storytelling
share.
comes
Hmm.
in, right? Because
Yes,
we
yes.
we all think that we need to do it on our own, or that we are, I mean, our stories are all unique, but they're not so unique that people don't get it, right?
Yeah.
We all have, our stories make us an expert in something, right?
Mhm.
It can be anything.
Yes.
And so being able to start sharing your story is terrifying, but it's funny because I remember, that's probably the biggest question I get asked is, how did you feel when you hit publish, right? And for
Yeah, yeah.
me, I was at the point in my life where it wasn't, nobody could say anything to me that was any worse than what I was already saying to myself. And so it didn't matter if
Yes.
I put it out in the world, because I was
Right.
already repeating
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
negative stuff anyway. So if someone
Mhm.
else said it, I could
Yeah.
have just laughed and been like, hey, I've already told myself that. Right. I mean,
Right.
and it's,
Yeah, you take the power away.
yeah, it's not, and I don't mean that it's a joke and it's laughing, but
Hmm.
it's it's putting it into perspective that you're going to share your story. No matter what, you're going to have haters. Even if it's a positive story, you are going to have someone out there that has a different viewpoint, that has a different opinion.
Yeah.
But that opinion doesn't matter at the end of the day. As long as you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I survived today. This is what I did to get there.
Hmm.
That's all that matters. At the end of the day is you're surviving. Even if it is barely surviving, you are still surviving. I have been to the barely surviving. I know what that is. I
Yeah.
know what it feels like
Right.
to crawl and not see any light.
Yeah.
And so it's not, so it, for me, when I hit publish, it wasn't terrifying. It was like this weight was lifted because I
Nice.
no longer had a secret to keep,
Yeah.
right? And that's
How,
what keeps you
right. What
so
is it?
stuck.
Our, our secrets, what's that saying? There's a saying, something about our secrets keep us small. It's not small. It's a, anyway, it'll come to me. It's really powerful because it's like how the secrets we keep actually keep us in prison and in shame. And when we can let them out, it's so empowering and freeing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we don't even know what we are so used to hiding. We don't even know that we're hiding anymore. It's just second nature.
Yeah, and that's definitely what the blogging journey took me on, because it was, I started as a way to share my story, but then it started to come as a way of showing people and showing women that this was the healing journey, right? That this is what I needed to do, because I didn't know who I was anymore. I was mom.
Right.
And
Yeah.
other than that, I had no idea. And so
Yeah.
it was really about me going through, okay, you know what? Let's revisit hobbies that I like to do. And you know what? If I don't like
Mhm.
them anymore, toss them. Right. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
it was a huge growing moment, because it was
Yeah.
like, I don't have to do what she did anymore. I can do what I want to do. I don't know what
Yes.
that is,
Yeah.
but I'll figure it out, right? And so it made the journey fun. It made it unpredictable,
Mhm.
but then they also saw the painful side, right? They saw me, um the one time I remember going live on Facebook, my group, um in 2016. I had my third, and it's funny because for the first two, I never had postpartum depression. I'm sure I had it, but it was never an issue. I
Mhm.
think because I went through the healing journey and I was doing a lot of that deep work, that when I had my baby in 2016, she was, I want to say 2 or 3 months old. And I remember reaching out to my family doctor, and it was 1 a.m. in the morning. And I reached out to
Whoa.
them through Facebook Messenger, and I said, I need
Oh,
help.
yeah.
I think I'm depressed. I'm like, I can't, like, I'm trying to hide my tears as my husband is sleeping in bed next to me. And
Mm.
luckily, someone still happened to be awake, and they messaged me back instantly, and they were like, come in tomorrow. You can talk to someone.
Oh, thank
And
God. Yeah.
I went in carrying Eliza in her car seat, still an infant, and the poor guy that was the therapist was extremely young. He was still getting his PhD, so it was basically a practicum for him, right? And I probably scared him, because I went in and he was like, okay, just tell me what's wrong. I could not even gather words. I was crying so
Yeah.
much that I was like, something is wrong. Just, I mean, I don't even know much about, the only thing I remember from that appointment was something he said to me, and it made such an impact that as soon as I got home, I started a Facebook chat in my group that I had back then, and I ugly cried saying what he said to me, because I remember him looking at me and just being like, you cannot be super mom. Your kids need to see you break down. They need to know that you have emotions. And that is the only thing I remember from that appointment.
Wow.
Hey, Oscar.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I remember from that appointment, because it shocked me, because especially as women, we are taught that no, we need to be the rock. We need to make sure everybody else is dealt with first. And here was this man giving me permission to not do
Yeah.
that.
Right.
And so I remember ugly crying on Facebook Live, which probably freaked people out. But that's always been my strength, is showing people the real side of healing, because I don't like to sugarcoat it. I don't like to cover it. It's not pretty. It is
Mhm.
messy.
Mhm.
It is
Mhm.
traumatic. but people need to see that. And that's really where the blogging comes in, is because they get to connect with me on that level. They get
Yeah,
to see
right.
the pain, they get to see the joy, they get to see the messiness of the healing, because
Mhm.
now that is building my trust with them. Their trust with me, it is building that connection that they can be like, I get her.
Yeah,
She talks my language,
absolutely. Mhm.
right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sharing those less than proud moments are really what make us relatable. And when you kind of get to the other side and you're not as in it anymore, in the thick of it, there is another side, and that, you know, post-traumatic growth is where I feel that a lot of women get to, and then they want to share. They want to share, like, oh my God, life doesn't have to be that way. I
Mm-hmm.
never knew. Like, we get so stuck in the habit. And then when you realize, oh, wow, it doesn't have to be pain all the time. I don't have to live that way anymore. I mean, when I started to realize that, and everything changed, like, I keep looking back at things that I used to tolerate and used to put up with and used to think were just like, oh, well, that's what you do. And I don't anymore. I'm like, oh, you guys, when I started to realize we do write our own script.
Mm-hmm.
And when you write a new script and you start acting that new script, whoa, it's
Yep.
crazy.
And
So,
that's where you go from survivor to warrior, right? When
right.
you start
Mhm.
making that decision to, okay, I'm going to share this part because it's going to help someone. And that's probably the biggest thing, is what I tell my clients is, you're not doing this, you're not sharing your story for the for your followers who are commenting. You're not sharing your story for the likes. You're sharing your story for that woman or man who is sitting in your audience that you know
Mhm.
nothing about. You have
Right?
no idea that they are there. That is
Yeah.
the person that you're doing it for, because you are giving them a voice. You are showing them that it is possible for them to go from
Mhm.
where they are to where you are.
Yeah.
And that's powerful when you're able to give someone that hope, right? That you can
Oh,
say,
yeah.
I was
Oh
where
my
you
God.
were, and you
Hmm.
can get to where I am,
Yeah.
right? And that is truly powerful. And that's where women
That's
are
where we're
changing
changing
the
the world.
world,
We're changing
right?
the world. Like, yeah.
Yeah, because
And
you are turning your story into a business. You are turning your story into this amazing, amazing transformation, but you're
mhm.
doing it through being truthful with yourself and being truthful with others and showing them that it's possible. And I'm a huge supporter of like the Me Too movement and all of that, but it's missing a huge portion, because the Me Too movement is fantastic because it has women coming forward and say, this is what happened to me too, but
Yes.
that's it. There is no after talk. There is no, okay, this is how I got through it. This is what I did to get past it. This is my healing portion. We don't talk about that. We don't
Mhm.
come forward and say, this is what I did on my bad day. This is how I healed myself, because
Mhm.
we think it's wrong.
Yeah. But there are people talking about it, though, in villages and groups and communities and online tribes. That's what I find so amazing. Through blogs, through conversations. Um, it may not have made it to mainstream television, but the power is it's happening in Zoom meetings, in people's blogs, and in people writing books, in support groups that are going on all around the world, where women are sharing their experiences, their education, their expertise, their energy. I got 4 E's right there. Um, and their excitement, 5, and their enthusiasm for healing. So Rhonda says, yes, that can be life-changing and life-saving. And she said before, forever changing from our experiences. So she was commenting, I believe, on your talking about how it's those people in the background who aren't commenting, who may not be reaching out to you and saying, oh, hey, how, can we work together? Or, oh, hey, thanks for sharing that. It's those guys in the back who are clinging to any little shred of
Yeah.
hope. And I remember being that person.
Yeah.
And receiving just little glimpses of, oh my gosh, what? And I would read books, I would devour anything and everything.
Yep.
Then I had this calling on my heart. I want to help people.
Yep. And that's where like the where when I say I'm recovering loudly so you don't have to.
Yes.
Right? You don't need to do it immediately, right? It's all about just those little baby steps to get to eventually where I am, where you can go out in public and be like, this is what happened to me, right? And I don't care who knows anymore. And
Right.
it has brought up some very interesting discussions with people that I barely know, because I'm no longer afraid to hide that piece of me. I'm no longer in that moment of it's my fault, right?
Well, yeah,
And
when you own the story,
yeah, and
they
I
can't
mean,
take it away from you. They
no,
cannot
and
shame
I
you
let
with it.
him have control. He didn't control me just for those few minutes that it happened. He
Right.
controlled me for 11 years. I let him have a say in everything, from the way that I had sex with my husband, right? He
Wow. Yeah.
controlled
Yeah.
every single piece of my life for 11
Wow.
years until I said, no more. I can't do it anymore. It becomes so exhausting giving
Yeah.
someone else your power that you
Mm-hmm.
just need to step back and say, I'm done. I cannot do this anymore. I don't know. I don't even know the guy's name. I mean, it's funny the things that we block
Wow.
out,
That's
right?
amazing.
I don't remember his name. I can tell you what he looks like, but I cannot tell you for the life of me what his name was, or anything like that. But we have
Wow.
such amazing abilities to block things out
Mm-hmm.
to help us along the way.
Well, that's a coping mechanism, right?
Yep.
It is a coping mechanism. Just like if we're, have a traumatic injury, we go into shock so that we can't,
Yep.
be overwhelmed by the pain. And that's something that people do when they're growing up and they experience trauma as a child or as a young adult at any age. Um, but the key is taking that power back and saying, I'm worthy of healing, I'm worthy of changing. And so many women, like you, like me, and so many others, they feel like, oh my gosh, because the world globally as a species, we are evolving. And what's happening is, in my opinion, the fact that we have the internet now, the fact that we have, the Me Too movement and all of these different platforms, and voices, and it's changing. It's changing our consciousness, and that we can share our stories. We can create safe spaces. We can create safe communities. This is leading every single conversation, every little message that somebody puts out there that is their healing. We are adding to the raising of the world's consciousness. So
Yep.
moving from victim consciousness, moving into creator consciousness, moving into I am consciousness, is, I believe, the on a global scale, bringing us from what used to be toxic masculine, we just got very out of balance with, we were a masculine culture, and globe, humanity,
Mm-hmm.
species. And now we are bringing the balance back. We're bringing that yin and yang, where feminine energy is growing, and
Yep.
it's growing very rapidly, at a, what's that, exponentially. And you've probably heard me say this before. It's like a tsunami. It seems like not a big deal And it's kind of happening on a low key way, but it's growing and growing and growing so big and so powerful. If we reach critical mass, which we're getting close to, we will have energetic balance. So women will not be victimized anymore. Women will not be abused, but it takes each and every one of us to do our part. And when somebody out there hears this, or they say, oh my gosh, maybe I can start to acknowledge or take back my power, or say, yes, this happened to me, or say, I want to help people in a bigger way. Every time somebody does that, we raise our consciousness, we heal a little bit more. And
Yep.
So I would love to know from you, Samantha, how you help your clients, how you help your audience. Like, what do you do? Like, I know you've helped me bring my words that are, my blog posts or my Facebook posts. You've helped me turn them into blog posts and post them on my website with, using the SEO,
Yep.
the helping Google to find it. But what programs? Yeah, Rhonda says the abuse is becoming more and exposed more and more.
Yes.
Exactly, because women are feeling safe to say, I'm not alone.
And the impact of that is, I have a son,
Yes.
right? Which means that he is going to be able to say, that's not okay what you're doing.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Because
He will speak up for somebody.
Yes, he is going to be that voice for someone.
Yes.
And
Samantha,
that is amazing to me.
That is so big, because as a mother starts to heal, the ripple effect to her boy children and her girl children is mind blowing. And then that changes their legacy. That changes every one of their relationships, where you can have a son who may stand up and protect other people. You will have girls who have voices to stand up and say no.
Yeah.
And then all of their relationships in perpetuity are different.
Yep.
And this is where, when I'm saying every time we show up, the change is exponential. So yes, thank you for pointing that out, because like the fact that I've done my healing work and have changed my relationship with my boys, and they've seen me evolve and grow,
yeah,
changes every one of their future relationships down the lineage.
Yep.
And so the healing is not trivial, that's for sure. So I would love to hear like how you help women. Like, I know you're a blogging coach. What does that look like? What does that sound like? And what else do you do? I know you do amazing things. So can you share with our audience?
Yeah, so how I do mine is I actually have two separate pieces to my blogging. Because it's funny, and this is something I probably still struggle currently with this, because I have this huge vision of who I'm going to help and what I'm going to do, and it's two completely sets of different people. They're all women.
Okay. Yeah.
But so I have it where it's simplified blogging, and then I have trauma-informed blogging. So I have two separate programs. So for simplified blogging, it's really all about the woman who wants to start blogging, not necessarily to share her story. It could be for any reason that she wants to start a blog, but she is more of the she needs help with the technical side, because I can break down blogging easily enough for people to understand it. And that's why I love working with beginners, because I love watching them go from I don't get this to it's way easier than I thought it was, right?
Yes.
And I love being able I
Yeah.
love being able to break that process down, and because I am super organized, and I love to say, these are the steps that you need. These are the plans you need to have in place. And that is really what the simplified blogging program is about, because you necessarily don't have to share your story, right? I mean, I always recommend you use storytelling in your blog posts, but some people aren't comfortable with that, and that is okay. And then I have the trauma-informed blogging, which is my new program that doesn't launch until September.
Ah.
And it is a year-long program. It is super
Oh,
long,
wow. Uh-huh.
because I wanted to make it stand out,
Uh-huh.
because I know how lonely and terrifying and scary it is to say, hey, I'm a survivor. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have created this program where the first 6 months is strictly one-on-one. You
Mm-hmm.
work with me, we set up your blog, you do not have to publish it, but we set it up, you start writing.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that. That is, and I give you the stuff that I did to help me on my healing journey, things that I brought in, things that I have learned throughout the whole, oh goodness, what is that, 7 years now that I have been doing it. And it incorporates both of them. And then
Yeah.
for the last 6 months, they have the option to join group coaching and one-on-one. So
Nice.
they'll get a combination of both, because then they'll be
Mm-hmm.
able to make those connections, and they'll be comfortable enough with me that if
Mm-hmm.
they're like, you know what, I'm really looking forward to meeting other survivors, or I need to have someone else in my background that understands what it is that we're going through, they can choose to, you know what, I want to do the group program, or they can say, you know what, I'm not ready. I just want to
Yeah.
stick with one-on-one, and
Mm-hmm.
that is okay. I want to give them the option to have both,
Yeah.
because it is amazing to have that community surround you and be able to get to know another survivor,
Yeah.
and just be able
Absolutely.
to talk and just listen and bounce ideas off of one another, because all of our journeys are different. So that's why I really love group programs, because you can have 5 survivors in a room, and every experience is different, and their input as to what you're talking about, they're going to have a different viewpoint. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
have questions, and that means those questions is what you can take to your blog readers. That is what creates your content, by having these
It
group
is.
sessions and saying, this I don't understand this, or this made me think of this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I love that I'm able to offer both, because I
Yeah.
think it's incredibly important to first get comfortable, because I know how you need that trust, right? You
Mm-hmm.
need to build that trust to come forward and say, I trust you enough to
Absolutely.
share my terrifying
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping to
And
build
I
in this
think
program.
also there's so much value in that long-term relationship,
Yeah.
um, where you really you peel back the layers,
Yes.
and you really get to know somebody, and that's where I found my clients to have the most massive transformations. Is we start with a 6-month relationship,
Yep.
and there's so much that goes on, and it's extremely powerful,
Yeah.
and you build a trust that and a bond. You talk about things that you just don't talk about with
Yeah.
everybody,
Yeah.
and it's really healing. Rhonda says, great idea. She loves your idea, and she
Thank
says
you.
it's really needed. Yes, it's definitely needed in this world. We're building these tribes and communities in so many different ways, and these conversations are happening
Yeah.
more and more, and they're so powerful.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
Yeah. So my website is just my name. So it's samanthalaycock.com. I have all of my coaching programs. I do offer one-on-one coaching as well, if someone's like, I don't like the coach or the group coaching atmosphere. And I offer, I do classes. I didn't do one this month. I was supposed to, but I didn't. And then, so I do at least one masterclass a month on a different topic. And then I also have a Facebook group if you are wanting to start a blog, or you're a beginner blogger. I consider a beginner blogger 1 year and less, and you've kind of like stalled, or you started with these high hopes and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that is Becoming the Blogger Within is
Uh-huh.
that group there that I offer everything in that group.
Uh-huh.
Um, and what else do I offer? I have a membership, a blogging membership, where you have access to all my digital products.
What did you
And
send? You sent me a couple of things. Becoming the Blogger Within, and then
Yeah, so that's the Facebook group. And then I sent you
okay.
my my freebie. It's a 21-day journey to being. It's funny because or become is it becoming? See, now I'm totally
Yeah.
sorry. It's been a long couple days.
That's okay.
And so
Well, I'm going to post the links to both of
yeah,
these and your website, Samantha.
perfect. Yeah, so the 21 days is just an
Comments.
email. You'll get an action step every day just to go and just to be, because it's funny, I chose that because we're always trying to be something, and I wanted it to just be nothing, right? Just to focus for that one action step, do that one thing today and kind of see where
Yes.
it takes you,
I
right?
love that. I really love, Samantha, how organized you are in your presentation and all that, because I'm all over the place, which I own, and that's okay. And I don't not like that about me,
Yep.
but I always appreciate I always so appreciate when there's somebody, in my space who is so methodical and organized. And I mean, while you're raising 3 kids and managing a house and doing all that, I'm like, how does she do that? Like, what?
That is why I'm organized, because if I wasn't, I would be like, I don't even know where I am today.
Yeah.
Like, just
Yeah.
it's, I mean, life is chaotic and crazy, and so it's funny because I think I've always been organized, but
Yeah.
not to the level I am now. Because I
Right.
feel like if I'm not, I'm just gonna fall apart. I'm never gonna
Right.
leave bed,
Yeah.
my bed, because I'm like, there's too much. I can't figure it out anymore.
Right. Yeah, I can hear that. Yeah, I mean, I look back when I had my 2 boys and I was running the show, and we had a huge house, and I was just, I don't know how I got it all done, but I did. I was like, whatever.
Yep.
And now that there's more free flow in my life, I do things as they come up and as they need
Yeah.
to be done. But you know,
That's what I mean.
I
I
really
still do
love your
that too, right? I
organization.
mean, you
And
need to have
yeah,
that.
I love the way that I love your presentation. I love everything about everything you're doing. And I know you're building something amazing for the world.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that you are here sharing your story, and giving people a place to start.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love it. Definitely, I never saw myself as a coach, but the second I started doing it, it was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Your leadership shows up so clearly in everything that you put out. So
Thank you.
sorry, but you are. You're take it or leave it. That's who you are.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
as we wrap up, do you have 3 things you want to say to anybody? Like, if they like, oh, maybe I want to start writing my stuff down, or this.
Yeah. Number one is just start.
Yeah.
I so often I hear, I don't know SEO, I don't know how to write a blog, I don't know the layout. It doesn't matter. There are certain things that you are going to learn as you go. Just start, because those, at the end of the day, SEO, content, it's all excuses. So
Yes, it's all an excuse, right?
just
So true.
start.
Okay. Number
And
2.
then number 2 is to be honest with how much time you have to give, because blogging has so many moving pieces to it that people are like, you know what, I'm just going to publish 3 blog posts a week and that's it.
Right?
They don't realize that that means like 80 plus hours of work at this point, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so just be completely and truthfully honest. If you can do 2 blog posts a month, do 2 blog posts a month. It doesn't matter, as long as you're consistent with the schedule that you pick. That's all that matters. You can increase it later, you can decrease it later. Always start small.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that probably should have been number 3, is start small.
Start small.
And then I'm going to say, have a writing plan. So by that I mean, step 2 was having a schedule. So a writing plan is how much time can you actually commit to writing. In the beginning of doing blog posts, it is going to take a long time. It's going to take anywhere from 4-10 hours a blog post, depending on how much time you need to research, if you're doing research or anything like that. So just be prepared that it does get faster. And as you're writing, I can get a blog post done in an hour if it's for me. But if I'm writing for a client, it can be anywhere from 3 to 4 hours, depending on what I'm writing about. So just make sure that you're super clear. And the first month, it's going to be kind of that practice period. You're going to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to blog. I'm going to write a post. See how long it takes you. It doesn't hurt to say, okay, you know what? That blog post took me 10 hours. Okay, then you know one blog post is going to take you 10 hours. How can you break that work up so that it fits your lifestyle? Because you don't want to start a blog and have your life revolve around it. You want your life to revolve around everything else. Right?
Well, thank you very much, Samantha. Rhonda said you both are amazing assets to the people you help. Absolutely. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you both so much. So I really appreciate having you on here, and feel free. People may be asking questions in the group.
Yep.
So
don't hesitate. Reach out.
Yeah.
Ask questions. I'm here.
And I'll post in the group how people can get to your group and check out your website and what you have to offer.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yay.
I will see you soon, Samantha.
Yes.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's see here.